There's been research that tells us that happiness has three components. It's 50% genes, it is 10% circumstances, and it is 40% actions. Now, if you were dealt a bad hand, a friend of mine is an ophthalmologist. I'm Indian, obviously. I have an ophthalmologist friend. And he told me, he's like, some people are just dealt a bad hand when it comes to health. They come in, they just have bad eyes. It's not their fault. That's just the way that it is. But if you're on the cusp, then 40 percentage points is a lot. If some tips and tricks in your circumstances can take you from 35% to 75%, that is a very big deal. Because sometimes you don't need to do something different. You can continue to do what you're doing and do it differently. There's a big difference. Do something different or do what you're doing differently. You might not need to quit P&G in Cincinnati and move to Los Angeles and be a stand-up comic. That might not be the only way to find happiness. You might not need an overhaul. You just need a couple of tweaks. Because it's our impulse a lot of the time when something isn't working to swing the pendulum completely the other way and say, screw this, it's not working, I'm taking another path. You don't necessarily have to do that. And I remember working at Procter & Gamble, Punjabis and Gujaratis, P&G, the Peej. And I remember that one of the internal mottos was, make a little, sell a little, learn a lot. And I loved that. I loved that idea. So sometimes it can be illustrated in a different way. Epicurus in the 4th century apparently said, I wasn't there, if thou wilt make a man happy, add not unto his riches, but take away from his desires. It was also sung in the 1940s by two men who sang a song called You Have to Accentuate the Positive, Eliminate the Negative. And the rest of that is you've got to spread joy up to the maximum, bring gloom down to the minimum. They're giving us a formula. They may not have realized it. And it was also illustrated by 4 guys in the 1990s called Boys to Men, one of my favorite first groups. I am a 90s kid all the way, so I love this song. And I'm not going to try to sing this because it's way below my octaves, but they sang, the good times that made us laugh outweigh the bad. Now, why am I giving you all of these different quotes? Because it turns out there is a happiness formula beyond the makeup of it, and I'm giving you the addition. I'm now going to give you the division. There's a happiness quotient, okay? Now, this is mine, and this is what I came up with. I said happiness is your perception of reality, not only reality, but also your perception of reality over your assumptions. Now, I want to be very, very careful because I once had this as expectations. And somebody goes, don't put expectations, because then you're basically telling people to lower their expectations. And people always say, you want to be happy, lower your expectations. Yeah, but if you have a happiness set point and an expectation set point, that's hard to do sometimes. I'll give you some tips and tricks for it, but you essentially have to increase the numerator and decrease the denominator, right? That's pretty simple, very simple math. Even a comedian who hasn't done a differential equation in a long time can remember a very, very simple formula like this of increasing the numerator and decreasing the denominator. The second tip, beyond the first one was be optimistic. The second one is be grateful. And I actually asked some friends out in Los Angeles for some tips on happiness. And my friend said to me, he said, and I'm going to read this. He goes, my wife and I offer a toast at dinner every night. Over the years, we learned to toast only what happened today rather than what we hope will happen tomorrow. Doing so makes it a practice of gratitude instead of wish fulfillment. I almost teared up hearing that. That's a really beautiful way of thinking of it. I think you can be both. I think you can be ambitious and grateful. I mean, I kind of treat it like parentheses. In the morning I wake up and I meditate. In the middle I go out and I kick ass and I treat people like stepping stones. And at night I pray for forgiveness. But I think you can do both. It's a balance. It's a balance. But no, I'm obviously kidding. Another one, we're in Boston, so I have to put up a screenshot of The Departed, one of the great movies. So 2006, there's Martin Sheen and Mark Wahlberg. And there's a great scene there where Martin Sheen's character is trying to recruit Leonardo DiCaprio to come work in their department, and they're undercover cops in this one. And he says, we deal in deception here. What we do not deal with is self-deception. That always has stayed with me. I thought that was really great. It's important to reduce the conflict between perception, especially self-perception, and reality. Because all week, I've had people ask me, why did you leave? How did you do it? You left Procter & Gamble, you became a comedian. I said, come to my session, I will answer this question, okay? I've also already partially answered it by saying that I turned 30 and I flipped out and I'm like, oh my God, it's really freaking me out that I'm still doing what I want. I'm not doing what I really wanted to do with my life because I love my job. I have a lot of people asking me all the time, did you hate being an engineer? Did you hate working at Procter & Gamble? I'm like, no, I liked it a lot. That's what made this decision even harder. If I hated it, it would have been easy. But it was really difficult. Most comedians are not engineers, right? Because the left brain, right brain thing, they're about as far apart as you can get. I'm just really smart. No, it's because a lot of us are cursed with this. So you're good at a lot of things, right? You're good at a lot of things. So it's hard to narrow it down into one thing. It was a series of 4 conversations that I had. One of them actually ended up in the New York Times. One of the conversations I had, it was an offhand remark by my brother. And there was a great article written. I could not screenshot the top of it because I don't have a subscription. So what I had to do was I pulled it up in Chrome and it pulled up the subscription thing. So I went over to Safari, shot the screen real fast, and this is what I got. So that's it. That's the middle of the article. Even the highlight isn't really relevant here, so ignore the highlight. But it was a great piece about the remarkable shelf life of the offhand comment. I loved that concept. Somebody says something to you completely offhand and it just destroys your life. You can't believe that a person just said that to you. And it was just like such a crazy thing. And I had that happen to me 4 times. And one of them was, I was in the media department at P&G and I was co-leading branded entertainment for all brands in North America. Super fun job, flying to LA and New York and talking to record labels and movie studios and talent firms. And my main contact at CAA, creative artist agency, the largest talent firm in the world, was this man named Roger Fishman. And we would talk every morning for about an hour. He was a great philosopher, and he would always share all this information and kind of life advice with me. Some of it sprinkled in here, I'm sure, because it got in there in the water somewhere in which I swim. And I said to him offhand, it was in the morning, we had these hour-long conversations, and he just goes, he's saying something, and I go, well, because I'm a wild and crazy guy. And he goes, yeah, 30 years in Ohio, 6 years at Procter & Gamble, you were so wild and crazy. Silence. And he goes, hello? I was the buyer, he was the seller. I go, I cannot believe you just said that to me. And he goes, look, Rajiv, here's the thing. You've been at the same company in the same state in which you were born. Your values right now are completely misaligned. He goes, if you're going to retire at Procter & Gamble, just admit that your values are security and stability, and that is what 99% of the world wants. There's nothing wrong with that. But if you're going to tell yourself you're wild and crazy, then go do something wild and crazy. Quit your job, pack your bags, move to the West Coast, and be a stand-up comic, because that would be wild and crazy. Because I'm not saying you need to do that, but you need to get your values in alignment. That was really tough. That was a really tough conversation to hear, but he was right. It really, really, really hurt because it's so important to define ourselves accurately. Finally, on this piece, recall the law of averages. Things have a way of reverting to the mean. At the University of Cincinnati, materials engineering, I remember I got a B in my mechanics class and there was no plus-minus system at the time. I was so pissed off. I really wanted an A. I got an A in fluid mechanics and that made me so happy because I worked so hard in that class. I got an A, I was so happy. I got a B in mechanics. It was mechanics 2. I was so angry about it. And I marched into Dean Young's office and I told him, I'm like, I should have had an A in this class. He was a very calm man and he looked at me and he goes, okay, maybe you should have had an A in this class. But admit to me right now, there are probably times when you got an A and you should have gotten a B. And I realized how right he was. I also want to punch him in the face because that made so much sense. I'm like, you were so right about that, Dean Young. That's not fair, but you're right. But it's the same thing you will say to a cop. A police officer will stop you. You'll say, but officer, I was not speeding. And most police officers will look at you and go, well then fine. This ticket is for every other time that you were.